Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Wednesday. My name is Melanie Richmond. I'm your well-being coach. And today I'm super pumped. We are talking about work-life balance and how it is BS. And how I have our very special guest, which has been on our show before, Marianne Lombardi. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Melanie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. I haven't shared this with you before, but I just love your name. Like every time I say it, just like comes off my tongue, and it just feels like it's just a fun name.
That's awesome. I will let my parents know that.
Good choice. Okay, so again, my name is Melanie Richmond. I'm with True North Wellbeing Coaching, your executive well-being coach. And Marianne has helped so many entrepreneurs, go from that 9 to 5 office grind into really stepping into their potential and, creating that dream life. So I know that Marianne's ahead of me in terms of her kids is almost out of the house and going into college, whereas mine is 2 and running around and still on the potty train.
Yeah, mine's potty trained already. Like they use the bathroom pretty well. So, yeah.
I had to laugh when I did my potty training book. I was reading it. They were like, when they go to college, you might have some accidents then too. Like, yeah, it's true.
Yeah, the cause might be different though.
Exactly. Yeah. So why don't we start off with our topic? So work-life balance. Most of our audience here is working in a corporate field. They have their personal life, they have their work life. And when in industry, we often talk about this imaginary work-life balance and everybody's striving towards it. But it kind of makes them separate, right? Kind of means that you're showing up to work, you're checking in, then you're checking out, and then you got your personal life in a whole different area. And there's no intertwinedness, which I think is complete BS again, because how can you, as a person, be showing up for work as just, your employee hat and then checking out and just being somebody completely different at home?
Yeah.
So that in itself doesn't make any sense to me. And then balance means that it's 50-50. And how on earth can your work be 50% as important as everything else in your life? So why don't we start off with that? I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like you say, the truth is that work-life balance is a myth, right? Like it is not actually possible to balance your work and life, because the reality is you only have a life, right? Your life is it. That's it. And your work's job is to support that life that you choose to live. And it's important because it provides the primary financial contribution to supporting that life. So I'm not suggesting that it isn't valuable, but it is not in any way, shape, or form equal to your life. Your life is just it. It is just one life. And your job is to figure out how to live the kind of life that you want to live. And you work your work into that life to help it support that life. But it is this myth that we, surround ourselves with, and especially as women, that we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to do this thing that is balanced. But it's not possible, because the labor that exists especially for women or primary caregivers is you have paid labor, and then you have unpaid labor, and then you have home shifts and night shifts and like every other shift, right? Like there's no way to balance out this idea of your labor, your work, and then the time that you are not spending on your work. So then when we try to force women into this idea that you can have this balance, they don't succeed at it, right? And self-care is not the solution to work-life balance. Self-care is a solution for relaxation. It's a solution for, understanding ourselves more and all this kind of stuff, but it doesn't solve a labor issue, which is the unequal, paid and unpaid labor that exists for women out in the working world. So striving for work-life balance is a recipe for disappointment and burnout. What really matters is figuring out what the heck you want, right? As women, as individuals, as people, is to figure out what is the life that I want, and what do I need to do to build the life that I want, and then structure your work, your leisure, whatever it is, around driving toward getting that life that you want.
Yeah, I love that. So, take away all of the to-dos and all of the different responsibilities and all of the labor that you talked about. And I've said this before on other shows, like, you can have it all in life, but you can't do it all. You need to outsource, you need to have system processes in place. And I love that, because often women, especially working women with maybe being a mother, working mother, they feel the need to be doing it all, taking on all the responsibilities, showing up, for their family all the time, and showing up at work, and, picking up the slack without speaking up and saying, hey, this is not working. And next thing you know, they go through a burnout. And I've talked to so many females in industry recently that have gone through burnouts because of that reason. They just kind of thought they could push through it. And with today's technology and demands that are increasing, it's hard not to allow that to happen, unless you've taken a few steps back and say, hey, what is the life that I actually want? Like you were saying, like what truly matters to me. And that's what we're all about at True North, is really finding out what that, North Star is for you, aligning your life along that, and making sure that you design it. As the engineer that I am, you design it exactly how you want, you structure it. And the only way you can do that within an organization is if flexibility is offered. And that's why people are leaving organizations and going elsewhere or starting their own businesses, because lack of flexibility.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. The flexibility is a big piece of it. And I also think that this concept of having it all is part of the problem, right? Because what matters isn't having it all. What matters is having what you want, right? Because all is too not specific, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it's this, and often there's a lot of social and cultural and systemic pressure that is underneath this thing about having it all, right? And so we strive towards this amorphous thing called having it all, but we have no idea what we want. So what matters is really shifting that gears to think about, how do we build that life that you're talking about? How do we find that true north? How do we do that in a way that allows us to be content and happy and satisfied and inspired and energized and all of those things that we want? But often we don't teach ourselves, like it's not taught to us to think and know and really be in touch with that want. And even asking what you want is a rebellious idea for women, right? Like it is, a rebellious like thing to sit down and be like, wait a second, what do I want? Right? Like that, it's hard to do, right? And it's not something that you are encouraged to do, especially as children. You weren't encouraged to do it. As an adult, you're not encouraged to do it. So it is a real act of generosity to yourself to sit down and say, you know what the heck do I want? How do I find that true north?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I say you can have it all, I'm talking about your big dreams.
Yes.
Like those dreams that you've thought of, that you've reflected on, and say, hey, what's actually important in my life? What's on my vision board? What would be, having it all for me, not for what society wants, what your parents wanted from you, what your employer wants, so I guess the one thing that comes to mind also is, like, if we are talking about work-life balance and how it's a myth. So work-life balance had that, traditional, or maybe old, I won't say traditional, old school way of thinking of you check in, you check out. So there was a little bit more separation between work and life, whereas now we're seeing that integration. So how are we setting those boundaries around, making sure that we're showing up how we want to, like you talked about the self-care, because self-care is crucial in order for you to show up energetically how you want, instead of feeling, low energy, deprived, whatever, in a negative state of mind. So how are we setting these boundaries with a bit of context around that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And you bring up a good point. Work-life balance was started as this work-leisure balance, right? And it was from an older time, right? Because it was talking primarily about men who are balancing, they go in, they clock in, they do their work, and then spending time at home with family on their leisure. And so this
Mhm.
thing that is work-leisure balance morphed into the thing that we know of as work-life balance. But it didn't really take women into consideration because it didn't define work in terms of labor, right? Which is why we get this unequal paid and unpaid labor situation. But when it comes to what you're talking about around boundaries, I think the first key to setting boundaries is understanding what your boundaries are supposed to protect, right? Because we teach
Mhm.
people how to set them, but we don't step back and teach them to think about, okay, before you even set a boundary's job is to protect you from something, right? Like protect your time and your attention, your physical, emotional, mental health, right? Like it's supposed to protect something. So if you don't understand what you're protecting, whether it's your values, your time, attention, your health, whatever those things are, your well-being, if you don't know what you want in those things, what you're protecting, your boundaries are not very useful because you don't know how to enforce them because you're not sure exactly what you're enforcing them for. So I think
Mhm.
part of this solution around boundaries is to get very clear on what it is that they're protecting you from, right?
Yeah.
And so when we think about our time at our office job or in our work, often, setting those boundaries requires us to really understand the landscape that's happening in that workspace, where we are being overused or underused, where the case may be, and how do we build up systems around us to make sure that overuse does not, completely destroy us, right, in our physical, mental, and emotional health or well-being.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think so many people within industry, the corporate world, including myself and lots of others have struggled with it is setting those boundaries and sticking to them. Because
Yeah.
once you break that boundary once, then people are like, "Oh, she's available at this time or she's available like,
Yeah.
on her vacation." And I see it all the time. People are taking vacation and I had a live about the importance of taking rest and
Mhm.
actually saying, "Hey, I'm enjoying my vacation right now. I will not be checking my email unless this is crucial. Give me a call at this number or something, stating that's not, I'm going to be periodically checking my email while I'm getting compensated on vacation and should not have to be working right now."
Yeah. Well, I think part of that, there's a couple of sections of what make that challenging. One is the lack of control, right? Because
Mhm.
often, and the risk, right? Often folks feel like there is a risk for them, and there is a risk often for not being accessible and not being available. There's a risk to your job for that. And so therefore, there's no way to enforce that boundary because the risk is too high to enforce it. The other thing is that if we don't create what the backup plan is, people are always going to be looking to you to solve the problem because you don't have the other person who is behind you saying, well,
Mhm.
no, while Melanie is out, Sam is there to take over the responsibilities that Melanie has at that time, X, Y, and Z. And so we have to put into place those backup plans and make sure people understand and agree to those backup plans to take over when you're not available to answer that question. And then the other piece of it is that we have to enforce it. And that's uncomfortable, right? Like it's
Yeah.
wicked uncomfortable to actually not answer that email or to not pick up the phone because everything in your brain is going, oh no, I'm missing out. I'm doing that.
Yeah. Is
Right?
there a fire?
Right? What's going on? Right. But the reality is, it will be okay. Right. Like it's uncomfortable to think about, but the world will not end without you. Right.
Yeah,
It just
absolutely.
will not end without you. But it is this thing of navigating that risk, figuring out what your backup plan is, and then actually dealing with the discomfort that is involved with, enforcing your boundaries.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit also on as an individual working for a company. If let's say you're looking at work life more as an integration, or I just like to call it life.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
And in your life, part of it, part of your passion, part of what you have to offer to the world is your work, and that gets structured in there. So you decide your working hours and how you work. And as long as you're delivering and you're providing positive services within whatever industry you're in, that's what matters. And if you're taking a conference call, which you're not leading, and you're just listening in and you decide, hey, I'm going to go for a walk in the trails, might as well. Or, it's late at night, but I need to get this proposal in. Like, you might be working with, a toddler running around you. You do what you have to. But the same goes with work, is like being more acceptive of sometimes industries, they have the offices be open when the daycares are closed or childcare is closed. Same things, I'm sure, like with schools, right? You have days where you're working, but there's no childcare. So bringing your kids to work, or providing some sort of value life experience that you don't have to keep them separate, and you're really building an opening for the next generation to feel comfortable having them be blended. And it's a dance that's always going to be evolving.
Yeah. Well, I think part of being able to do that is actually listening to women and primary caregivers about what they need, right?
Yeah.
And actually then providing it for them, because a lot of times you'll see people have these roundtables and talk to women and primary caregivers, but they don't actually follow through on the solutions that solve the problem. So that's one piece of it. And then the other piece of it is recognizing that we are measuring our work by our outcomes, not by our time, right? Are your employees delivering? That's great. Whether they're logging in or you're micromanaging their time isn't like, that doesn't lead you to the outcome or to the revenue or to whatever it is that the business does, right? So having managers and leaders understand how to measure based on outcome and not measure based on time, and like literal physical location, is going to be key. And then the other piece of it is also, it is so expensive to retrain and hire new people, that like it's ridiculously expensive to lose somebody. So, putting the pressure and the onus on leaders and our CEOs to really understand the cost benefit of analysis of being a better leader, being more accepting of the needs of women and primary caregivers is better for their bottom line than it is to continue to lose people, rehire, retrain folks who are only going to be there another 18 months because they're going to get burnt out and pissed off because you haven't done the other things, right? And then you're going to have to rehire and retrain. So it's going to be a learning process, but the companies that really get this, I think, are the ones who are just going to have the better employees, are going to have the better retention, are going to be able to keep folks. And those that don't, send them to me, because I will help them become entrepreneurs, because that's what I do. And that's what I love. Is help people get out of those crappy workplaces, and build those dream, businesses that they want, so they can lead the life they want to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring out a good point here in terms of employee retention, because across industry right now, we're seeing so many people leaving the workforce. They're leaving because the grass is greener over there. They're getting more flexibility, more money, more vacation, whatever it is.
Right.
Or they're starting their own venture, and maybe they're talking to Marianne about it because they know there's more for them. Yeah. They know what I'm doing right now, checking in, checking out, is not the life I want to live for the rest of my life. I want to have greater impact, and I know I have more to offer. And anyone that's feeling that way needs to take action, needs to say, I can't stay how I am, right? It doesn't matter if you talk to myself, to Marianne, any coach, or, your best friend, your dog, like, just take a step back, realize what you actually want, and say, hey, what would my ideal work day look like? And what type of work, what's my zone of genius? What's my superpower? And how can I really make that impact I want to make in the world? And if that fit is within that organization, great. If it's not, it might be elsewhere or on your own. Because like you said, we do need to have a means of income coming in to support the lifestyle that we want. And I think all of us have something to offer that is completely unique and you can follow that passion of yours. Like I'm a strong believer. This is why I took the leap in my business. Since having my son, I said, I want him to follow his passion and actually pursue what he really wants. And I'm all about, supporting people to live their best life by realigning and redefining and creating the life that they want.
Yeah.
So I couldn't just stay where I was, because I was like, I am so good at connecting with people and really understanding their deep desires. So I got to take the leap. So Marianne, I'm curious to know, like, what got you into helping entrepreneurs or helping people leave the 9 to 5 into building their own business?
Yeah. So I've been doing this kind of work of coaching people to either build their businesses, or myself building systems projects, businesses for other entities, right? So I've always been in this either entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial
Right.
role. So I just, somebody else was paying me to do it. The organizations were paying me to, coach entrepreneurs to do this kind of work. But I jumped out on my own, not unlike what happens to other people. I mean, I had been thinking about it, but the sort of like straw camel thing was I was on a call with my boss and had to justify why I missed another phone call because I was in the bathroom. And I just said, listen, I don't bring the phone in the bathroom with me. Like, I think that's a pretty reasonable boundary to have. And I literally
Too many people do it. Too many people bring their cell phones to the bathroom.
And I had to justify to this individual why it was that it was okay for me not to bring my phone into the bathroom. And I got a call from the general counsel who was on that phone call afterward. It was like, oh my God, that was just not what should have happened. But that was the date. After that call, I picked a date because I was like, you know what, this isn't right. Like, I shouldn't have to be spending my time doing this. And I love the work I'm doing with individuals, right? Like, I love the work I'm doing with entrepreneurs, because that fills me up. It lights me up. It gets me on fire. I love that work. And I love the work I do with cities, but I just can't do it within this environment. And I don't have to. And I think that's what people sort of need to realize, is that change is scary. I get it, right? Like the unknown is a scary place to be. It is much easier to stay where you are with what the misery, if it is misery that you're in, than to jump into the unknown. But the possibility and the opportunity is on the other side of the unknown, right? And so all it takes is just a step, and then another step, and then another step, and another action, and another action, right? To lead you to that place. So I'm all about helping people realize and assess, like logically assess. So what's working where you are and what's not? Like, what's the possibility where you could go, right? And what are the liabilities of where you could go? And let's figure out how to make that jump if that's what you really want to do.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's amazing. That's very powerful work too.
Yeah.
And being the engineer that I am, I think it's great to look at both spectrum, right? Like, not just the potential, but also the risk.
Yeah.
And, and then when you look at the full picture, then you can have a clear image of how am I going to move forward.
Right. And I think that's so important to say, because I think people are so afraid of the consequence of that risk, right? Is that they don't even want to engage it. But it's a wonderful exercise to go through, is to be like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Right.
Yeah.
Let's break it down. Right.
Have you ever done the fear exercise by Tim Ferriss?
I don't know if I've done one by Tim Ferriss, but I've done a handful of fear exercises. Usually I give credit to my dad, because he was always like, all right, let's talk about the worst situation. Like, what's the worst thing?
That's pretty much the basis of it. But you just go through kind of the worst thing that can happen and what it would lead to. And then you'd also do the opposite.
Yeah.
Of like, what's the best thing that can happen? And then more of the middle ground.
Well, I think we often don't think about the best one as much. Like, I know that's a one that I have to constantly remind myself to think of too, because the worst is easy to think, for me to think of, but the best is just as possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, because all of us have a tendency to be more optimistic or pessimistic. And I'm always more optimistic. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to reach for the sky and I'm going to get there.
Yeah. No, I am too. Like, I always just assume everything is going to work out, right? And maybe that's good or bad, I don't know. But I'm always like, you know what? If it fails, no big deal, right? Like, it'll work out. I'll figure it out. I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's great. So any last tidbits or any last message that you want to leave our audience on?
Yeah, the main thing I would just say is start indulging your dreams, right? Like, and just really give, even if you give yourself 5 minutes a day where you sit down and you just write out, what do I want? Right? Like, even
Mhm.
if it's just a brainstorm, right? Just start brain dumping the things that you want. And they can be ridiculous, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Just start dumping out of your brain and getting in a habit for yourself to be thinking about what you want. Because we think about what we need often, right? Like, and especially women and primary caregivers, you are conditioned to think about what you need because you are trying to do and accomplish and serve and help and right. So you think about what you need, but you don't spend nearly enough time thinking about what you want. And needs are finite, right? Like, needs are about, like, what do I need in the moment, in the immediate? I get that need, and then I move on to the other need. I move on to the other need. But wants are long term. Wants are dreams. Wants are big picture stuff. So start thinking in terms of wants instead of needs, and just start writing it down and see what you come up with.
I love that. The wants versus the needs. And anybody that's within an organization that's maybe at a C level, that is losing employees and whatnot, and they're saying, hey, I have all these employees that they're realizing their wants, and they're saying, oh, we don't think we can fit within that organization, and they're leaving. And the question then becomes for that person is, how can we have that conversation? How can we open it up so that maybe we are offering more flexibility, or that individual comes up with a creative solution to make that work within the organization if they want to stay?
Yeah.
Because I think the only way in today's world to stay in business is to keep up with the change. And
Yeah.
society is changing, especially after this post-pandemic. There's been so many changes in organizational health and how people are prioritizing different things in their life and how they want to work. So I think this was a great conversation, Marianne. I had some great insights. I love the wants versus the needs. And thank you so much. Before we leave off today, I just wanted to say a few things. We do have a webinar. So it's going to be a really nice 90-minute webinar at the end of the month on August 29th. It's a Monday. So you can tune in at 12 p.m. MST until 1:30. And we're going to be talking about how to live that intentional life. So what Marianne and I were talking about all today is like, what are your wants? What's your big dream? Taking down all the barriers and really getting crystal clear on what you want and how you're being right now. What's holding you back? And how can we work towards removing those obstacles so that you can get there? So creating that roadmap to get you towards your true north. So we are going to be opening up for registration later this week. So I'll be sending out some information. So you're going to want to tune in for that. I've already had lots of people connect with me saying, hey, I want to be in the workshop. It's free and it sounds amazing. We'll also be doing kind of an intro to our 2-month program, which is all about diving even deeper into it and seeing the transformation come through. So it's very exciting. You're not going to want to miss this. And I also have a bonus, a complimentary 20-minute strategy session with myself as part of your registration. So tune in to that. Marianne, I did forget to mention, how are people going to reach out to you if they want to connect?
Yeah, that would be great. So you can find me on LinkedIn, just Marianne Lombardi. I am there, or I am Marianne Lombardi on Instagram. So come connect with me on those two channels, and let's hop on a call. If you have heard anything here that is ringing true, let's hop on a call. You can just jump on a quick 15-minute discovery call. It's free to chat and see where you're at, and see if there's an opportunity to work together. So I appreciate your time, Melanie, and everybody. If you haven't signed up for this workshop, please do, because I can imagine it's going to be really, really valuable in helping you build out your well-being.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Marianne. And we'll drop the links to connect with you in the footnotes or in the comments.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Happy Wednesday. See ya.
Bye.